and we are back with the epic, fantastical series finale that is Once and Future. For those of you who have been rocking with us until now, I appreciate you. This is probably the longest story I've ever done, so thank you for watching. Now, let's get into it real quick. We begin this video with Lancelot and the mother of our freaking king, both bonding on the roof until Jack, the nurse, comes through and tells them both to come inside. It's getting cold. Before they could even move, the earth moved. They heard a rumble, something loud enough to stun even Lancelot himself. He looked around looking for the cause of this ruckus, only for him to watch as the castle they stood on exploded. Something was flying out of it, something huge. And Lancelot paused for a second and said, "Finally, the story ends." And it was coming to an end. It's just a shame our hero had to die for this to happen. Because at this moment, Duncan was fighting for his life against the magical dragon that was Merlin himself. Because Duncan had the story of Beowulf, he could only be killed by a dragon, so Merlin took it upon himself to change into the one thing that could take his life. Attack on attack on attack. Duncan did his best to avoid everything, but he knew it was only a matter of time before Granny takes one to the head. So he had to defend her. He had to protect his grandmother. Running out of cover to tickle the attacks so she could light up the fuse, and she was frustrated, screaming at the top of her lungs, "My stupid daughter is going to destroy the world," as she ran towards the fuse to light it. But Merlin was no fool. He realized what was happening, and Duncan prayed to high heaven that his grandmother was fast enough. But before she could even light it, she realized that she had a gun pointed to her head. Mary, her stupid daughter, stopped her right in her tracks. Granny asked Mary, "What are you doing?" And Mary made it clear, "I'm saving my son." Granny was so angry, saying, "You want to sacrifice one son for another son who is already dead." And she simply said, "Raising Duncan was your job, not mine. I need Galahad." And for once, Granny didn't know what to do. She had no options. Duncan, her beloved grandson, was about to die. Merlin was about to kill him. Duncan was bleeding from everywhere. But he was tough. He didn't whimper or beg. He knew this was his end. But just before everything could end, his baby girl came through riding a freaking dragon. Without saying a word, she unleashed the dragon on Merlin, and the dragon went to work, instantly attacking Merlin as she came forth and looked at her boyfriend and said, "Boy, you look messed up." And he said, "You're Arthur. Am I the Guinevere in this story?" And she said, "Yup." And they both smiled and ran off to attack. But as soon as they turned the corner, they saw Granny about to die at the hands of her daughter, Duncan's mother. And Duncan got frustrated as well. "Can we stop this killing? Can we just stop? This is pointless. The world's about to end." But Mary didn't care. She simply said, "I will not lose another child. I want Galahad." And at that moment, Granny decided to tell Mary the truth. "Your son is dead. You failed him. You condemned him to a fate he did not want. And now you want to bring him back as what Merlin is, an immortal ghoul, an immortal spirit. You want to put him in another position he does not want. Let him go, Mary. He is dead. Let him go." And for once, Mary let it go. She accepted her wrongdoing, allowing Granny to set off the bomb, which blew up the river lit and sent all the water above ground. Merlin saw this and screamed in rage, "No!" But the water pressure was too much. The explosion was so great, all the water was absorbed by the clouds, being absorbed by the river god, who didn't even know what it was. Merlin shouted with all of his strength, "Stop it! If you absorb that water and rain it down, everything will be lost. They will forget." But the dragon said, "Who gave you permission to speak?" ripping into Merlin's throat with his sharp teeth. But the message was received by the river god. Everything was in his hands now. Granny could do nothing. But one person had the ability to change all of this. Lancelot himself looked to Rose's mother and asked, "What is my fate? What is the end of Lancelot? Will I be remembered as simply the knight who laid with his king's wife? Would I be remembered as the failed father that I am?" He looked at Rose's mother and she had no answer for him. And so he made a choice to change his fate. Using his water abilities, he jetted right into the cloud and soared directly into the water god's presence. He didn't notice him because he was made of water as well. And Lancelot, he sacrificed himself to destroy the water god. And the rivers of forgetting came pouring down. Everyone forgot everything. All the world was turning back to normal. And both dragons had killed both of themselves. The legend of the birth of England was complete. Everyone was surprised that Merlin was dead, but he really wasn't. He was an immortal ghoul after all. He promised to do it again and just simply left. And now they had to leave. But Mary saw her son's spirit and realized that she couldn't leave this place. She couldn't leave her boy. While everyone was supposed to walk and not look back, Mary couldn't help but look back. She called to her mother, begging her mother to look at her, but her mother made up her mind not to turn. Mary called and called and called, and finally she screamed, "Look at me!" And Granny finally turned around, and what she saw was Mary saying, "Look after Duncan," as the portal to hell was closed. There was no saving Mary. Whipping out the bottle with the last vestiges of the river of forgetting, she gave everyone else to drink. Rose took a sip, and so did Duncan, and their memories were clear. And Granny took hers, and the reality was rewritten. Now, everything was back to normal. Reality was changed to a world where all of them just came forth to visit Granny at her home. And when they left, Granny went back to her room, which is where she saw a photo that they all took together. And she was happy until she turned it around and saw in her handwriting simply saying, "Vomit, now." And when she did, her memories came flooding back. She remembered everything. She tried to call Duncan, tell him everything she saw, trying to tell him to vomit as well. But she couldn't even bring herself to do that because Duncan was happy. He was with the woman he loved. So she decided to keep that piece of information to herself. She smiled and told him to take care of himself. She doesn't mind being the one to carry the burden of what happened. She lost a lot of people. And if anything bad should happen again, she doesn't mind being the last defense the world has. Her single greatest regret is that she couldn't save her daughter. The end.